Hello, I'm Calvin Morris, and today I'm going to be doing another one of my top 5 favourite episodes of, and today I'm going to be doing The Incredible Hulk. The 1970s, 80s show starring Bixby and Lou Ferrigno. I want to do it because it is a show that I personally enjoy, and it's something I like to share with people. So before I get to my top 5, I'm just going to do a quick rundown of the show. The show began in 1978, and it was at the time when Universal and Marvel were working together, and they'd already done several projects together. During the 1970s, there were a couple of superhero shows on the air. You had, sort of Bionic Man, Bionic Woman, Wonder Woman. Batman was still in syndication. Captain America they'd made. Don't bother with that. And Nicholas Hammond was swinging through New York as Spider-Man. And they were looking to do another property. Kenneth Johnson was brought on board, and he was given several options. He didn't really want to do it. He really didn't like the idea of doing comic book stuff. It wasn't really for him. They settled on the Hulk, and to cut a long story short, basically they told him that, look, you can do what you like with this series within reason, but make it your own, but just try to make it something that you yourself would enjoy. Now, there are 3 books that had a major influence on the series of The Incredible Hulk. The first one is Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. Then you had the obvious Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. But the main book that had the biggest influence on the series, which is kind of odd, was the Victor Hugo novel Les Miserables. Now, when you think about it, they aren't really two things that really go together. Les Mis, The Incredible Hulk. Not really, but it was the biggest influence for the series. The story, obviously, with Jean Valjean and Javert, where he's a guy, he's on the run. He's a big muscly bloke, and he has to hide his identity, and he's being pursued by an investigative, obsessive, compulsive nut that's trying to bring him to justice. And you can kind of see it now. When you put the two side by side, it's like, oh yeah, it makes sense now. And obviously, by introducing this element into the story of the Hulk, it became the hook for the entire series. I personally think it was a stroke of brilliance to incorporate this element into it. Now, it was a separate thing away from the comic books. They tried to not bring any comic book characters into the show. They wanted to give it a sort of a more real world feel. Which I think worked for it. I think it's what made the series very much loved by the public, was the fact that it was a real world thing which still had this one sort of outrageous element where he transforms into the Hulk. And it's that whole story element thing whereby only get your audience to believe one impossible thing. And in each episode it was the one impossible thing is that this man can transform into this impossible creature. So that pretty much is the show. The show didn't really have an end. It got to the 5th season, and the show was still doing well on the air, still doing well in the ratings, but for some reason, and I'm pretty sure nobody can really explain why, but they decided to cancel the show. Universal probably just felt that it had come to its run. They told every reasonable story there was to tell. Kenneth Johnson at the time was proposing a couple of things that they could do to go forward, which was, one was a story about his David Banner's sister, where she was going to be suffering from a terminal illness and was going to require a blood transfusion from David Banner. And the idea being there was that we really don't know what happens if you take Hulk blood and put it into somebody else. And the other thing was that he really wanted the final episode to be David Banner finds the cure. It brings the story arc to an end. That's the final episode was going to be David Banner finds his cure and is released from his curse of the Hulk. There's something to be said though for the way that the actual series finished, which was once again David Banner putting his coat on, putting his bag over his shoulder and walking off down the road into the sunset. In that, by not having it end, the story still goes on, and I kind of like that anyway. So yeah, I'm not including the TV movies here, the Return of the Incredible Hulk, Trial of the Incredible Hulk, and the Death of the Incredible Hulk, because I don't think they hold up really well. I mean, the Return of the Incredible Hulk, where Thor shows up, oh good grief. The Trial of the Incredible Hulk, which introduces Daredevil, which is my first introduction to the character of Daredevil. And you got John Rhys Davies as Kingpin. Asps, very dangerous. You go first. Yeah, it was a bit weird seeing him as Kingpin, and obviously the Death of the Incredible Hulk, which for me did make sense, because the way he dies in the, spoiler alert here, but the way he dies in the Death of the Incredible Hulk is that he falls out of an aeroplane. Why is that so unbelievable? Because in the episode Freefall, he falls out of an aeroplane and he actually transforms on the way down, and when he hits the ground, he just gets up and walks away. So it's not really believable that that's how you could kill the Hulk. But anyway, that's the series, and now we'll get on to talking about my top 5 favourite episodes of this show. Well, first on the list is the episode Darkseid. This is my number 5 pick, and this episode, I'm going to tell you right now, this episode is bonkers, goofy and batshit crazy. This is really, it's really a bizarre episode. They decide to, David Banner decides that he is going to experiment on himself with drugs to try to control the Hulk, because experimenting on himself worked so well before. He decides that he's going to chemically treat himself to try to suppress the instinct to Hulk out. And it backfires. It goes completely the wrong way, and it creates an alternate persona. This is crazy because he's already got an alternate persona. So he's already got a split personality, and now he's got a split personality within a split personality. And that split personality has a split personality. So there's 4 people in one character here. You've got David Banner and his Hulk, and you've got this sort of nutty Professor Buddy Love character and his Hulk. And it's all inside one person. It's a real bonkers, crazy episode. I mean, there's even one scene whereby David Banner is in his sort of like Buddy Love persona, and he's at a strip club, and he hulks out. And there's this one moment whereby the Hulk looks at this attractive woman in a red dress, and just for 1 second you think he's going to Hulk out in a very different way. It doesn't happen, of course, but it's a family show. But it is in there. There's that one moment where you just think, he's not just angry, he's horny. So it's a bizarre, crazy episode, but it shows Bill Bixby and just going for it, just having the time of his life and just really going for it. It's a bit of a fun episode, and I just enjoy it. That's why it separates itself from the rest of the series, and that's why it's my number 5. Number 4 is the 2-parter Mystery Man. Now, normally I don't include 2-parters with my top 5 list, because obviously they have longer to tell the story, they have bigger budget, so normally they don't make my top 5. But it's my list, and I can change the rules if I like. So yeah, Mystery Man Part 1 and 2. This episode is about David Banner getting in a horrible crash where he is lacerated and burnt, and his face is all bandaged up. And Jack McGee shows up, and he says, look, this guy's got amnesia. I can take him to a clinic in Los Angeles, and we can try to get his memory back, and hopefully that will help us lead to capturing the Hulk. Now, when they're on board the plane in a terrible storm, the plane crashes, Jack McGee's legs broke, and they're forced to work together to get out of the situation that they're in because there's a forest fire. This episode is a disaster movie from start to finish. I mean, not only is there going to be a forest fire, but they're hunted by wolves, and there's a snow blizzard on the way. I mean, it's every single situation that they enter into is just getting worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. But I like the episode because it takes the antagonist and the protagonist and it puts them together, and they've got to work together in this situation to survive, which I think is always really good. a good thing to do, a very good storytelling device, is that you take your good guy and your bad guy. Not that I call Jack McGee a good bad guy, because really he's trying to do something for a really good reason. He's trying to expose the Hulk to the world so that everybody knows that this threat is out there, and he's trying to bring the Hulk to justice as well. What he believes is bringing the Hulk to justice. So not only is it a good idea for story motivation, but I think what I like about it is that you get to understand more of why Jack McGee is doing what he's doing. And you suddenly realise that both Jack McGee and David Banner, they are both doing it for very selfish reasons as well. They've got this larger, greater good reason, but when you narrow it right the way down, it comes down to selfish reasons as well. So, you know, David Banner's doing it to sort of stop the Hulk and cure himself, and, you know, make himself better. You know, not just cure him, but to make his life better as well. So those are sort of selfish reasons there. But the other reason as well with Jack McGee is that he's trying to bring him to justice and also make his life better as well. So the two of them are doing it for larger reasons and selfish ones as well, and that's what makes these two characters really good together. Bad thing about this episode is the photography. The photography in this episode is just weird, bizarre, crazy, and just bad. I mean, there are points where, you know, they track at a car in a shot, and the car is half out of frame. They make some weird choices in the fact that a couple of times it breaks the fourth wall. It's shot from David Banner's perspective, from Jack McGee's perspective. It's just a little bit eclectic. And then you get the stock footage shots, which appear to be 8mm shots that have been upscaled, you know, these upscaled stock shots, and the quality jump difference is massive. It is a huge difference in the quality of the footage, which again is probably them just sort of, you know, working with what they had at the time. Also, they do these weird freeze frames. I've never really seen it throughout any other episode of the Hulk, which makes this really bizarre. It's obviously that they were cutting away to commercial, but the shot just literally stops dead. It just freezes, but the audio keeps going. It's like, what the piss is going on? But despite all that, I still think it's a really good story, and it's a really entertaining and fun episode, and that is why it makes my number 4. It also, again, it's something unique and different. It's not just David Banner helping some guy at a rodeo or something like that and being pressed on by, you know, gangsters or whatever. It's literally, it's a bit more thought gone into this episode. That's why it makes my number 4. Number 3 is the episode Proof Positive. Now, this makes my list because it is such a different episode to the Hulk, and it's very, very enjoyable. Pretty much what happened when they were making this episode was that Bill Bixby was going through a particularly difficult divorce and literally couldn't be on set. He had to be in court, and it forced the creative writing staff to write this episode, Proof Positive, which essentially is a story about Jack McGee. It's about his daily life and his pursuit of the Hulk. And I mean, Bill Bixby actually isn't even in this episode. The only time you ever see David Banner in this episode is it's done by a stunt double. But what's really good about it is that by forcing them to do an episode which is all about Jack McGee, you get to understand the character's motivations. You get to understand the fact that this guy, the reason why this guy is so obsessed is because it's cost him so much. It's cost him his personal life. It's cost him his relationships. He is, you know, people don't believe him. He tries to convince people that the Hulk is a real thing, that he's a real threat. Even his publisher doesn't believe him, so he's trying to force them to let him carry on pursuing it. And not only that as well, I really like the fact that we get to see it from the eyewitness perspective. We get to see a Hulk story from how the outside world sees it, because for the rest of the time you're following David Banner and you always see it from our lead actor, the lead character's point of view. In this one episode you get to see how the rest of the world sees it, and I think it's a very good idea, and I think it's a very, very good story, and I really enjoy it. That's why it makes my number 3. Number 2 on the list is the episode Prometheus. I love this episode. I love this. Prometheus Part 1 and 2, I absolutely love it. This is the closest thing you will ever get to see in the Incredible Hulk show that is anything like the comic book with the Hulkbusters. The basic story is that a meteor has crashed and the military show up to try to sort of cordon off the area and everything. And the meteor has given off some really weird gamma radiation. Now David Banner's nearby and he goes to see what the hell all the commotion's about, and it triggers a transformation. Now what happens after that is that when he tries to revert back from the Hulk back into David Banner, he gets stuck halfway. He just cannot fully revert back to David Banner. He's caught somewhere between David Banner and the Hulk. The military show up, think he's an alien, they decide to capture him, they send in all the big equipment, they take him to a facility inside the Colorado Mountains, and basically then he sort of hulks out. You know, he's still going for it, and yeah, it's a real filmic episode. It's a real big story, there's a lot going on, but they take a lot of time to show you these big elements. There's a lot of big shots whereby you've got multiple helicopters flying around, you've got large convoys, you've got these big props, big massive props. They go to this facility. I got a feeling it was it was either a power plant or a submarine manufacturing facility or something. It just looks spectacular. The lighting in the episode is very, very nice. It doesn't necessarily follow reality or continuity in any way, shape or form, but I mean there's times where the Hulk is just cut out in a silhouette, and you know, there's even one shot where he's in a silhouette and he's running and he's being backlit, and then it cuts to the reverse angle and once again he's running away from us and he's being backlit. So it doesn't necessarily follow continuity or reality, but they do light it so it looks very, very nice. I love this episode. I like the resolution to the episode. I like the fact that it shows Jack McGee as well that he doesn't want the Hulk killed. He doesn't want him dead. He wants to bring him to justice, but he doesn't want to kill him. He wants to save him. So yeah, that is my number 2 pick, which is Prometheus Part 1 and 2. Very good episode, very, very enjoyable. Now we get to my number 1 pick, and my number 1 pick is the pilot. This episode is brilliant. It's my favourite episode of The Incredible Hulk. I just love it to pieces. It's so well done. This really shows you what you can do with really sort of no visual effects. Just what you can do with a camera and shoot. Now obviously, you know, it cost a lot of money. Nobody's saying that it didn't. But it's literally, you know, they took a big guy, they painted him green, and then they used several cutaway shots to show the transformation and stuff like that. What I like about the plot and the pilot overall is that it sets up the story so well. David Banner's motivations for looking for a way to tap into the hidden strengths that all humans have is good. They sort of use this pseudoscience to kind of explain it. They get into the frustrations of the character and the fact that the guy has anger management issues to begin with, which becomes obviously the hook of the series, is one of the hooks of the series. But they set it all up so nice, and it's very, very filmic. There's something about this episode which it just seems a bit grand. It's something that they were able to sort of go forward with the series, but I don't think they ever really managed to recapture the pilot. The look of it, the way it was shot, the lighting, the camera work. This episode really does push out just you know, it raises the bar for what can be done. So yeah, that's my number 1 pick. It's the pilot of The Incredible Hulk. It's my absolute favourite episode that they ever made. It's great seeing Lou's Hulk out. I mean, the first time he hulks out, my word, if you want to know how to write for something like this, just watch this, just observe it. You know, you get the motivations of the character, you get the motivations of his friends, you get the motivations of the antagonist, you get to see things like how do you set up something. Like, for example, the first time he hulks out, from the moment he takes the gamma injection, we all know what's coming. We all know. Okay? But how they set that up is in pure frustration. It's literally a textbook classic way of setting up something to a point where it's going to explode. You know? And he tries to lift the dolly, he can't, it frustrates him, it makes him angry. He's really pissed off. He leaves in the night, it's tipping down with rain, you know, which pisses him off even further. He gets in his car, you know, trying to start it, it's just annoying him. He gets a flat tyre, which pisses him off. He tries to change the tyre, the boot, he can't get the tyre out of the boot of the car, which just annoys him. He scrapes his hand with a tyre iron trying to take the wheel off. He does it again and boom, you know, out comes Big Lou, and that's the end of that. I really love this episode for all the reasons that I've just said. It's directed well, it's story driven, it's character driven, its audio is brilliant, the sound is brilliant, the music is fantastic, and plus as well it comes with the Lonely Man theme, which to me is one of my favourite pieces of music ever written for any theme tune, anytime, anywhere. It's simple but so effective. It's like they use it at the end of every episode because it's like waking up after a thunderstorm. Anyway, that's my top 5 picks of the episodes in The Incredible Hulk. Let me know what your favourite episodes are. Also, what do you think of my choices? And feel free to like and comment on this video. Subscribe to this channel, go over and join me on Google+. But until next time, I'll see you later, guys.